This is it. You click the link to the podcast, and your whole body dissipates into blackness as your entire field of vision is consumed by a void. You have no choice but to embrace the abyss, surpass absolute darkness, and plunge into an inverted oblivion. It blinds and disables you, heightening your sense of sound at the expense of all others. You embark upon an audio-psychosensual voyage into a sphere of unknowable words, yet to be said, that ought to be said, that will be spoken. A fiery crescendo of 1,000 angelic voices. Then suddenly, silence. It's all gone. There's nothing left. Only final mouth. Holy fucking God. First order of business, I gotta explain exactly what it is going on here. I know a lot of you have questions, like, what is this? Are you going to do this in character? Is this like an in-character thing or what? No, this shit is 100% real. I don't owe you people a character. I don't owe you a little fucking clown act. This isn't ironic. Fuck ironic. We're bringing back sincerity in the fucking 2025. We're bringing it back into this world. Wholesome sincerity. And I don't want to hear any bitching in the comments, in my emails. This is going to be my personal Netflix. A new Netflix special worth of content every week. And it's just as good as a Netflix special. And they're going to call me the human Netflix special because of how good what I'm doing here will be. Because what we need to do right now, we need to get real about, the act of posting and how humiliating it is and how rotten it is. Because posting is dead. It's gone. It's for children. Nobody wants to read that little shit anymore. Those little posts, little cute little posts on Twitter. They were good for a while, but we live in a different time. It's people are jaded. They're like Walter White on season 5 when he's like bad. And, after COVID and the loneliness epidemic of males and the crisis of boys, it's grown too powerful. And, the posts, they're no longer enough to satiate the shattered hearts of the disillusioned masses. The entire world, it's built up sort of like an immunity, a thick, impenetrable callus to these little fucking jokes on the internet. Now you post some like little 140 character limerick about like, oh, I said something weird in front of the waiter, or I'm a big pussy and my ass is under arrest for crimes, or why do they call them popsicles and not tasticles? It's just like all those stupid little fucking jokes. You look like an asshole posting that. But you get the fucking instant writing credit on BoJack, 500,000 faves on that shit. That's what they used to call likes. They called them faves. What an embarrassing thing to be a part of back in like 10 years ago. Just zero respect for any of that. And if it wasn't like bad enough, I mean, with the AI shit recently, posts, they've just become something like an obstacle. They've become something that must be waded through, like swamp water. They're as common as dirt. And the new generations, they're rightfully poo-pooing the post. They're disrespecting the post, and they do not respect the post. Gen Z, what's the one? Gen Alpha, they don't respect it. They just want to they want to doom scroll the Rizzler. Yeah, about the Rizzler. He's that like little chubby boy who does the sort of like little face touching gesture as some sort of a sex move. Personally, I don't find it seductive, Yeah, now the CDC has actually specifically advised against touching the face, to prevent the spread of COVID. So yeah, I mean, that's good. He's just flouting the rules imposed by the professionals and putting us all in danger just for a bit of tail. But, the Rizzler, I don't know if you heard, he's fucking everyone right now. All the adult women that I know have been fucking the Rizzler. All the women that I'm too shy to ask on a date. He's just fucking them all, and that's outrageous. We got to do something about this. We got to stop him. I guess too, the people want to see Hawk Tua. Y'all want me to talk about the Hawk Tua girl? Oh, I'm gonna talk about the fucking Hawk Tua girl. You believe me on that one? I mean, where do you even begin with that? Jesus Christ! Just taking something as timelessly sacred as human sexuality and putting a bunch of shit all over it and turning it into a bastard version. You know, nobody will ever get hard again in this world. Oh, what? You're gonna spit on my dick, huh? Oh, that's real mature. Then what happens, genius? You just want to watch me jack off using the spit, or what? Or do you want to just turn around and go home while I'm standing there with spit on my dick? You want to maybe throw me a napkin over here? Get real. But also, like, why the hawk part, of Hawk Tua? The hawk implies a mucusy discharge, a sort of a repulsive, like, sticky substance, which is often a carrier of disease. It's disgusting. And when it comes to Hawk Tua, I believe that the Tua is sufficient, just the saliva part, because saliva is an intimate, sensual fluid. It's often employed in kisses, and it does not require the mucus generated in the throat area from the prerequisite hawk. And actually, fuck it. Roundabout where I come from, spitting on someone's dick like that is actually a sign of disrespect. If someone spits on my dick roundabout where I come from, you better believe we're going to be going outside to exchange some words. And by words, I more often than not mean hands. Right in the goddamn teeth. But it's this sort of content, it's content that disrespects the male penis. It ignites something primal within the youthful mind that, text-based media, it just can't even touch that. It just can't even reach that. And that is why the Post is widely considered to be the least respected form of media in 2024. And you just got to put something of actual substance on the table. Anyone can make a post. Nowadays, like a fucking robot can make a post, and it's just like a dog could make a post. That's just where we're at right now, and that's why I find myself basically on my knees, kind of like, I invested so much in the Post, but now I'm on my knees limping, and I'm just crawling towards the fucking podcast, which is probably the second least respected form of media after the Post. So I basically compare myself to a flea triumphantly leaping off the corpse of a dead dog onto a homeless man's genital. I'm escaping absolute death in order to flourish within the most viable alternative that will have me. And I'll still probably keep posting though. Like Donald said about Coca-Cola, I'll still keep drinking that garbage. But the trolls, the fake fans, they don't like it when you start a podcast. They're going, "Ooh, starting a podcast? Oh, nobody wants to hear that shit. What are you doing? How dare you? This isn't canon. You're not respecting the source material of the brand. I'm gonna cut your fucking head off. I'm gonna bust a nut on the back of your shirt. I'm gonna kill you. I'm gonna run you over in my car." And to them, I would say, I'd like to see you try. I'm very strong. I'm very strong. Killing me would likely be a huge problem for you. And then they come at me with, "Hey, I have another question for your white podcast that nobody asked for." So are you going to have like any guests, or are you just going to kind of talk to yourself like some sort of mental health victim? And I say, well, we will cross that bridge when I come to it. I'll get guests on here as soon as it becomes clear to me that this venture is not a complete waste of time on my end, and I will not have to waste someone else's time by roping them into it. But this is the first step of a process, This is the first stone that shall build the foundation of whatever this thing is destined to become. It's kind of an exploratory era. It's about figuring out the tone, like what kind of guests I want to have on, like what kind of, it's new. It's new. We're working on it, and it's going to grow very organically from here on out, and it'll culminate in me being featured on The Ellen Show, which is what I want more than anything. But before I got started on this venture, I had to go back and kind of study the ways of the old masters. So I went back and I looked up the very first episode of Rogan, and oh boy, what an event! What a sight to behold. If you have like any sort of imposter syndrome or any like nagging feelings that you're not good enough, or that you should shut the fuck up and never do anything in your life, you just gotta go watch these first like few Rogan experiences and maybe like reconsider the role of merit in our society. The very first episode, he's just kind of like sitting in front of the computer in a fucking office chair, just kind of like clicking on the settings like a 10-year-old child. Just like experimenting with all the little buttons and gadgets that he's got at his fingertips. And he's just this like blurry ass 200 by 200 resolution webcam feed, like the size of a postage stamp, just blurry as hell. And he's just scrolling through all these like built-in effects, like the ones that make like little snowflakes appear on the screen, or like kind of like flames shooting up from the bottom. And he just says, oh, that one's gay. He's just scrolling through them. Oh, that's gay. That one's gay. And, some of them he doesn't call gay. He just kind of like looks at it and, shrugs, goes on to the next one. But he calls most of the filters gay. In one of them, he's sitting next to his friend, Brian Redban. This guy has since fucking vanished from the show. It kind of sucks for him, since the show's making like a $600 billion a year now. And Joe's like talking about whatever cool shit he likes, UFO, steroids, or whatever. And, Brian is just like fucking with his iPad. And Joe like notices this, and like he scolds him live on air for playing with his iPad instead of engaging in the conversation. And of course, like this guy Brian, he has like some excuse. He's like, no, I'm doing research for the show on here, but Joe's not having it. And it's all so relatable, because we've all had that friend who's just like fucking with his iPad while you're attempting to say the most important shit of all time. It was very clear they had like no real plan while doing this shit, but it just kind of worked out for him, And I think that's kind of the way to do it, is just hop into the deep end of with the whole podcast shit, because podcasts, the goal is just to replace empty air with words. It doesn't matter like how good they are. Everything else, like being actually funny, being actually informative, it's all secondary. It's all bullshit. If you can satisfy those criteria, it's nice. It'll probably get you more listeners. But just sitting down on that toilet, which is also the computer, and just creating something you can commit to, that's like 90% of the battle. Just getting on that toilet, putting something out there into the world through the asshole. And it's hard when you're like trying to come up with an idea for a podcast, as if it's totally necessary for your podcast to be about something, or that you require some sort of a gimmick. You start thinking like, maybe, fuck podcasts, I'll start a prank channel, or I'll be one of those guys who tricks pedophiles on YouTube and bothers them. You know, the pedophile hunters. It's a very interesting case, those people. You know, we all loved Chris Hansen. We all loved the Chris Hansen show. You know, that was a lot of fun until one of the predators killed themselves and they couldn't really do the show anymore. You know, there was one fellow on there, he really kind of stuck out to me. He just won't leave my mind. I think about him every day. You know, while Chris is like grilling this guy, just like, you know, 50-year-old man, old looking dumpy fella. You know, he reads a quote from the chat logs, as he often does in his iconic newscaster cadence. And I quote, "Can I taste your nuts?" And the guy, you know, he hears this, he kind of like shakes his head. He's like, no, that's not my style. That's not my style. And, you know, that's how he chose to deny it. You know, I'm not a pedophile, but that's not my style. As in, that is to say, if I were romancing a minor, that's not the particular way that I would go about it. I would never taste a boy's nuts. That's culturally inadvisable to me. That's weird to me. It's you know, chuggy or whatever you want to call it. You know, what a shithead. I hope that guy's gone. I hope he's gone. I hope he's out of here. But Chris Hansen, I think he's still doing it. I think he's on YouTube now, kind of like posting the same thing he was doing on NBC, Dateline. But you know, he I guess he really didn't need to come back because, you know, he kind of like passed the torch onto these this crop of YouTube freaks, pedophile hunters, who are basically able to do what he does, but without being held back by any like the professionalism or accountability that a guy like Chris Hansen might have, you know, with his attachment to a major corporation. But some of the guys, they're like better at it than the other guys. Like some of these guys have absolutely no juice, no charisma. You know, some of them have that like kind of like the shittiest voice you could possibly listen to. There was one guy with a voice, I'd kind of like describe it as like the shithead nephew voice. You know, all of his videos, he'd just spend like an hour chasing a guy at CVS. Some guy like 5'2", wearing a hoodie and a ball cap. You know, he's like screaming, like chasing after this guy. She's 14 years old, Kevin. Why are you texting a 14-year-old? She's 14 years old, Kevin. Why are you texting a girl? And it was just like an hour of this, you know, just completely unlistenable. This guy's voice. And it's like, we don't know a guy with like the shithead nephew voice, like 30-year-old man who sounds like that. And it's just upsetting to have to listen to that. You know, you're like rooting for the pedophile. You're like, oh, shut the fuck up. Shut the fuck up. Your fucking mouth sucks. And what's crazy too is like these predator hunters on YouTube, they always have these like premium versions of their websites where you can watch the uncut versions of their videos. They're always like 6 hours long, and they're just like hanging out in the parking lot with this guy waiting for the cops to arrive. Just like making small talk with the pedophile, talking about the weather and shit. Who the fuck watches these? They're so long. What does this 6-hour video add to your life? Does watching this enrich you somehow? Does it make you less of a pedophile to absorb this content? You know? But if you don't want the premium content, but you still want to support the channel, you can buy like a t-shirt with the Pedophile Hunters logo on it. It's usually like a little cartoon of their face, like kind of logo-fied. But has anyone in human history ever like worn that in public? Can you imagine having to explain that to like a beautiful woman just walks up to you and says, "That's a cool shirt. Is that like a band or something?" And you go, "No, it's actually this guy on Rumble, which is YouTube for adults, who pretends to be a 9-year-old and tricks pedophiles. I like him because he says funny things while he's doing it sometimes." You know, I don't think you're like getting her number. You ruined a nice first impression between a man and a woman by talking about pedophiles thanks to the fucking shirt you got on. And I've tried selling shirts. It's not easy. I probably sold like 8. I don't push them that hard. But probably half of the ones I sold were to my dad. And I don't think like people want to wear something they have to explain to everyone who sees it. I just want like a cool picture, maybe a word or two underneath it that doesn't have anything to do with the picture. Maybe in like Japanese or something, so you really don't have to explain it. You can just say, "Oh, it's Japanese," I don't know what it says. It just looks cool to me. So shirts, they're a no-go for me. The books, they do pretty well. I like selling books. But it's hard to put them out consistently, so now I gotta do this fucking podcast. I'm working on a game, too. It's pretty good. It was during COVID. I really like buckled down. I taught myself how to code. They say you got to keep yourself busy while you're cooped up inside all day. Otherwise, you'll be jacking off for like 17 hours. But game development's it's kind of slow due to other obligations, but it's going to be good. It's going to be really good. I got like, Sweet Baby Inc. on board. And now I know you're all thinking, uh-oh, that's not good. That's Gamergate. But these guys are professionals. They'll make the game really good. But they told me you got to make the game woke. It's not woke. And I said, listen here, Sweet Baby Inc. I operate beyond the woke non-woke dichotomy. I'm not just going to sit here and let you pick my game apart like a pack of drunken vultures. I put a lot of heart into this product. And I will not see it suffer. Not for woke, not for anybody. And they said, okay, well, but you can't make it so the female characters get a stat boost whenever they take off their bra. And I said, why? Why? And they said, it's not realistic. And I said, fuck. You got me over a barrel here. I guess you win this round, Sweet Baby Inc. And then do you know what they told me? They said you can't have the player put on a Native American Indian headdress in order to engage berserker mode. They said it reduces certain people's lifestyles to something hideous and abominable. So I got mad. I said, okay, well, what fucking mode should he enter when he puts the headdress on? Nice mode? That's not going to be any use to the gamer. That's going to make the game stupid from a gameplay standpoint. And they said, if you leave that shit in the game, it's going to get us all murdered. And I said, all right, I'll get rid of it if that's what makes you happy. But you know who's not going to be happy about this? The fans. Ultimately, they're the ones who are going to suffer. But I did cut you guys a check for $800,000, so I really ought to heed your advice on this, I suppose. And then the last thing they said, it really got me. They said, I can't have a feature in the game where the main character has the option to recover 1 HP by eating doo-doo. They said it promotes unhealthy attitudes and invites mockery towards mental health. And I said, that's why eating doo-doo only recovers 1 HP, because it's not a healthy thing to do. And 1 HP is not very many health points. And if eating doo-doo offends the gamer, they have the option not to do it. But if I take this feature out, the fans will have my nuts on a platter. How dare you? So they said, lose the doo-doo eating feature, or we'll have every games journalist in town skewering your deranged beliefs for all to see. And I said, fine, I'll replace the doo-doo with a dead rat. And they said, no, that's still bad. Fuck me, right? I just want to make something nice. I guess that's too much to ask for. Without people coming at me with a saber pressed up against my neck. Oh well, more to come.
I'm a performer. I push the envelope. I work in a very uncontrolled manner on stage. I do a lot of free association and spontaneous. I go into character. I don't know. is that's so insane about this?
It was a day like any other at the Jeff Dunham Memorial Middle School for Adult Men. I had just filled my cup with a customized mixture of Dr. Pepper, orange Fanta, and tap water when I took my seat in the cafeteria and overheard the raucous bleating of my hated peers. Aside from the usual pedestrian babbling upon topics ranging from unfair gameplay mechanics to loose women, there was discussion regarding their plans for the weekend. Their plan was to gather about a mile down the road from the Edwards Air Force Base in Kern County at sundown and set off a lifetime supply of fireworks that one of them had won in a contest run by the Planters Peanut Corporation. I thought, yeah, this should be good. Good for a laugh, maybe. The day of the event rolled around, and as I drove down that dusty California road, I considered many things. In the past, I had made my opinions on fireworks very clear. They are loud, they are wasteful, but most importantly, they are disrespectful to our veterans, who often shit their pants in terror when they hear them because the loud noises are known to remind them of death. The frequencies produced by such devices are similar to those associated with the lethal bombs of our enemies that would produce bits and pieces of shrapnel which render the young bodies of our veterans asunder. It is also important to note that dogs are just as affected by this fear of explosions as veterans are. As a child, I once asked my grandmother why this was the case. She told me that dogs are reincarnated veterans who are being punished for the crimes against humanity that they committed during war. And it is their sworn duty to do penance by protecting the lives of their owners, as they had failed to protect their fellow compatriots in their previous life. That is the reason both soldiers and dogs hate fireworks. That's horrible, I told her. I don't want to be a veteran, Grandma. I don't want to turn into a dog. I want to be a boy forever. She assured me that this was just a tale made up by our nation's finest poets and academics to console victims of PTSD, and you don't actually have to believe it if it brings you any sort of discomfort. I said okay. So because of this and many other reasons, I morally oppose the use of fireworks and sharply rebuke those who would promote them. 6:45 p.m. I posted up close to the meeting site about an hour early in my silver recreation Porsche 550 Spyder, the car James Dean died in. I lit my cigarette and leaned against the hood as I thumbed through content on my phone, observing my favorite website aggregators, which maintain a tight focus on world events, while also containing comment sections providing user insight sorted by merit. Finally, a noisy, dusty cloud appeared over the horizon and came to a stop near the rendezvous point. The obscurity dissipated, revealing a gray, unmarked, windowless van. A sudden kick from the inside swung the van's back doors wide open. And here comes the circus, I said to myself with a grin. I readied my binoculars and prepared myself for the upcoming spectacle. The first guy to step out was this guy either named Duncan or Bob, wearing his Syracuse University hoodie that he inexplicably owned, which was about 2 sizes too small upon his bulky frame, and judging from his sunken-into eyeballs and ghostly yet freckled pallor, it could be surmised that he was far too close to death to be participating in such outings. His curly red hair was so absurd-looking that it looked artificial to me. I took a mental note. This guy 100% for sure smells like shit. The second one of them clumsily shambled out of the back of the van like a wild buck being freed from captivity. Lanky and awkward and sickly skinny, this guy seemed too tall for his DNA to cobble him together properly. A collection of off-market parts. He was dressed like a cartoon duck, with a top gum line that could be seen from outer space. The only man I have ever seen who had both an overbite and an underbite. Dumb as rocks. Rounding out the trio was another imposing figure, emerging from the vehicle. Dark, slicked-backed hair and a prominent brow that completely obscured his eyeballs. I clocked him as sort of the leader of the group, by virtue of him being the most normal presenting of all of them, as well as his ironclad, serious demeanor. He was wearing a t-shirt that simply said God. Finally, all three of their girlfriends hopped out of the van at the same time. They looked like angels to me. They were virtually identical, but I didn't think they were related. They looked like a bunch of young Vanna Whites, a vision I was intimately familiar with, as I had watched every episode of Wheel of Fortune from the years 1982 to 1993, back before they made this show stupid. As I imagined these three beautiful women taking turns ravishing these horrifically ugly men completely sexually, I couldn't help but produce a sizable erection. You win this round, I sighed beneath my breath. They got to work immediately, cracking open cans of beer and chugging them down, splashing them all over each other while bellowing the most horrific and disgraceful slurs. I shook my head. Is this what our once great society has been reduced to? I felt myself frowning in disbelief, and by the dour looks on their faces, I could tell that their women shared my sentiment. Then came the main event. They brought out a bunch of firecrackers. I carefully studied the packaging, but I couldn't read the logo. All I could see was that there was a picture of Osama bin Laden on it with a set of crosshairs on top of his face. The tall guy grabbed an explosive and lifted it high while lighting it up. "This is what I'm gonna do to Paul Pelosi," he gloated. Suddenly, the device detonated within his clasped hand. Watching from a distance, I only just smiled and thought, now this is getting good. The girl shrieked as a fine mixture of bone splinters and hand guts sprayed everyone within range. The victim looked at his sinewy, spaghettified wrist as he saw one of his gnarled fingers slowly slide down the side of his mangled stump and plop off onto the dirt below. "Fuck!" he yelled. Duncan or Bob laughed at him as the leader berated him for his foolishness. Then Duncan or Bob took one of the explosives and started further lecturing his injured friend as he lit the fuse. "You see, that's why you're a dumbass. You just don't pay attention. We're always telling you that you're the biggest pow!" The explosion interrupted him before he could finish his thought. He looked down and saw that his hand was completely gone, while his forearm was marked with a red cleave reaching deep towards his elbow. "Shit," he said. "I gotta talk to my fireworks guy. There's something wrong with these." "Christ," the leader said. "Let me show you how it's done." He lit one of the fuses as he noticed a platter of triangular bite-sized sandwiches that the girls had left on top of the cooler. Distracted, he put the firecracker into his pocket and reached for a snack, only to recoil in pain and terror when the explosion produced a gaping crater in the side of his body. "God damn it," he said disappointedly. As the girls attempted to nurse the boy's wounds using wads of Burger King napkins that one of them pulled out of the van's glove compartment, the tall one took his one good hand and stuffed a couple of the sandwiches in his mouth before grabbing another firecracker to give it another go. "Stop!" the girls yelled. "It's dangerous!" "I don't care, bitch! It's Boys' Day!" The firework exploded in his hand, seemingly without him even lighting it. This explosion was larger than usual, obliterating not only his hand, but part of his torso as well. Several of his organs spilled out of the wound as he rolled onto the ground, his blood and guts forming a disgusting mixture with the sand and dirt that painted his clothes as he struggled to mend his wound using the deformed, bony apertures that were once his hands. "Ouch," he said. The rest of the gang freaked out. "We gotta get out of here," they said. They left their friend behind as they gathered the remaining triangular sandwiches in the cooler and piled into the van, speeding off into the distance. I pursued them. Somewhere along the way, the leader and his girlfriend dumped the Duncan or Bob or whatever his name is and the two other girls on the side of the road while they were all screaming at each other. I continued following the van until it stopped at a picturesque 3-story home on an enviable plot of land in a charming neighborhood adorned with weeping willows. The leader limped out of the vehicle and went inside with his woman close behind him. I turned my lights off and sat in my car, waiting outside of his home, biding my time. About an hour later, I climbed a tree to peer inside of the 2nd-story window and witnessed the duo making love, using cowboy-style sex, despite him missing a small portion of his outer thigh from the previous accident. "Ouch! Ouch! Ouch!" he said, each time his stunning, perfectly proportioned girlfriend bounced on top of his pale, wounded carcass. She grew a bit concerned. "We gotta get you to a hospital," she said, picking up the phone. Her sexual partner snatched the phone clean out of her hand and flung it across the room, shouting, "No! The pain makes me hard!" I watched it all unfold with a smile from ear to ear. "We gotta get you to a hospital," I repeated mockingly. I quickly pulled out a notepad and jotted the phrase down. "We got to get you to a hospital." As a writer, I often draw inspiration from the world around me and the events that I experience in my life. And this was just more ammunition for my arsenal, so to say. Later that night, as I was driving home, I was stopped by 2 police officers. They told me they received reports of a man fitting my description prowling around the neighborhood, gazing into people's windows. I smiled and said, "Gentlemen, I invite you to spend as much time as you need searching my vehicle. You will find what I already know, that I am an innocent man who is also pure of heart." Basically, immediately, one of the officers grabbed my notebook from the passenger seat. It was then that I began to worry, since when it comes to police, writers like myself are generally looked down upon as a profession. The outdoorsian lifestyle of the common patrolman often is not conducive to an appreciation of the written word. I imagined they would consider my work unrelatable at best, and at worst, they would deem it a threat to society. I decided I needed to come up with a story if I wanted to gain the respect of these men. "I'm a journalist," I told them. They weren't listening. They were too busy examining the contents of my notebook. "What's it say?" one officer asked the other. "I don't know. It looks like he wrote, 'The pain makes me hard,' over and over." Upon hearing him say that, I laughed, remembering the very interesting thing I had seen earlier that night. The officers tackled me and bent me over the hood of my car. As one of them pulled out the handcuffs, I quickly realized the humor of the misunderstanding I was involved in. Inspiration struck. Pure gold. I needed to write this down, and quickly. The officer, seemingly possessing an uncanny sense for criminal behavior, immediately read my intentions and spoke. "Don't do it. If you reach for that pen, I will kill you." This was it. The final battle between the creative and carceral classes. For me to relent here would have implications that extend far beyond this present legal skirmish. Art and culture were dangling over the edge of a cliff, begging me to save them and prevent a dark future marked by the vile agony of living in a world where the illumination of the writer's mind is forever snuffed out of existence beneath the cold steer-hide boot of the lawman. And so, I had to grab that pen. So what happened that fateful night? I must admit, my recollection of the incident grows hazier by the day. It feels to me like a dream, disintegrating faster the harder I try to grasp it. All I know now is the feeling of grass beneath my feet, the wind blowing through my whiskers, and the humming of a world that exists beyond my comprehension past a 6-foot wooden fence, I gallop towards the call of my master. It's time for dinner.
You know that
Can I taste your nuts? And
That's
will
not
you
my style.
Blank me. That's what porn is.
That's
Lots of
my
already
style.
sex. How can I?